We had a game, Indiana Fever versus the Las Vegas Aces. Indiana Fever win, the Aces fold. Let's talk about it. It was a good game to watch. In the first quarter, we had them neck and neck. Second quarter, we have the Aces trying to push. They don't go as far as they want to. In the third quarter, we have the Indiana Fever making a surge to get some points, and they continue that in the fourth quarter for the win. It was a good game. Before I get started here, there was some iffy calls by a couple of the refs that were there. When fouls were called, that didn't seem like they were accurate. As a matter of fact, the coach of the Fever, White, got a technical called on her during the game because of a disagreement with one of the refs. So some of the calls were not, and there's one time where we have Asia Wilson over the back of Aaliyah Boston, and it was called a jump ball. And in order for you to get over the back of someone, in order for you to get there, you have to make some kind of contact. Leah Boston had the ball. And so when Wilson comes up in the back of her and is waving her arms and hitting her back and forth, that's a foul. But it was called a jump ball. There were actually about 6 or 7 jump balls called during this game. 6 or 7. Okay? And it seemed like that was the ref's go-to for that game. Instead of making the call, whether it was a foul or a not foul or whatever, it was, they basically just said jump ball. And that time against Wilson and Boston, when Wilson was just like wrapped her arms around her, okay, in order for her to get there, that should have been a foul. But it was not called. It was called a jump ball. So the refs still are not getting it. They either refrain from doing their job or they actually do their job wrong. What's going on here? This has got to be fixed. It's got to be fixed. And it's going on too much for people not to notice. And if they are looking at the tape, if they're looking at the video after games have been played and looking at them, correctly, then why are they not seeing that on certain times, certain referees are not making calls, or they're making calls that don't make sense, or they're not making the calls that they should make? So this should be rectified more than it has been. Why is it not? Okay, back to the game. So the Fever stepped up. They stepped up. And you know what? I'm thinking that they stepped up for some reasons, but the one that I'm thinking about is this. They didn't want to lose. When you have the mentality of you don't want to lose versus you want to win the game, it's different. When you don't want to lose, there's a hunger, there's a that grit that comes out. There's that, those claws that come out. There's that, we got to do this the right way so we don't lose. As opposed to the mentality of I want to win the game, it's lukewarm. It's kind of flat. But when you say I don't want to lose, that's different. And I believe the Indiana Fever had this kind of mentality going on during the game. Kelsey Mitchell was stellar. She was running around that court, like a jackrabbit, back and forth, in and out. They didn't know what to do with her. Okay? They didn't know what to do with her. And also Ari, the same thing. They didn't quite know what to do with them. But this is the way, when you're playing small ball, you have to be fast and you got to be accurate with your shots. So because if you're running around the court fast, but you're not going to get the buckets, then what sense does that make? So you not only have to be quick, fast on the court, but you have to be able to get the buckets. And that's what they did during the game. Okay. Um, you know, at the time of this taping, the Indiana Fever have actually acquired Bibby to be on the team. I think that she's like 6'2". I would have thought they would have gotten a taller big if they could have found a taller big. Bibby is not someone to just like put to the side. She's someone that you want to keep your eye on because she can make buckets and she can get in the middle of the paint and disrupt. That I've seen her do when she was with the Valkyries. So is it a bad choice? Probably not. Could there have been a better choice? Maybe. But she has signed a 7 day contract with them. So we see what happens. But they definitely needed someone with height, some weight, and someone who's not afraid to disrupt in the paint and really be on a defensive, for the team. So we'll see what happens. For the first quarter, it was 18-18. So it was a tie. Okay, the first quarter. Second quarter, Vegas had 23. Indiana had 17. So right there, like I said, they were trying to push. Aces were trying to push. The third quarter, Aces 15, Indiana 27. This is where Indiana Fever began to push. And it was significant. All right. And it is at this juncture where they have to hold on to their lead because there's still time for the Aces to catch up. But what does the Fever do? They hang in there. Fourth quarter, Aces 14 and the Fever 18. So what they did in the third helped them in the fourth. And they continued to push in the fourth, enough to disrupt the Aces. Okay. So they made less baskets and the Indiana Fever made more. The score ended up being 80 Indiana Fever, 70 Vegas. Now, for Vegas, Melissa Smith had 10 points, Wilson 20, Gray 9, Lloyd 8, Young 19. From the bench, Bell had 4. Okay? As far as 3-pointers, it was 1 of 3 for Lloyd, 1 of 4 for Young. And which was interesting is that Nye only had 1 attempt there, and she's usually a 3-point shooter, but she didn't have any. Indiana Fever, Natasha Howard, 18, Boston, 13, Mitchell, 21, Cunningham, 15, McDonald, 9, and Colson, 4. For 3-pointers, Mitchell, 3 of 9, Sophie, 3 of 4, Ari, 3 of 3. Okay. Timpson was in for 7 minutes, and she had 4 rebounds. Okay. And like I said, Boston had a double-double. Howard had a double-double, which is really good. And this was the third meeting with the Aces, and the Fever have won 2 out of the 3. As far as the attendance at Gamebridge, it was 16,166. Team stats. As far as field goal percentage, 40 Aces, 40.8 Fever. 3-point percentage, it was 13.3 for the Aces, 47.8 for the Fever. Free throws percentage, 82.4 for the Aces, 78.6 for the Fever. Rebounds, 37 for the Aces, 36 for the Fever. Assists, 12 for the Aces, 12, 17 for the Fever. Steals, 7 for the Aces, 9 for the Fever. And blocks, 3 for the Aces, 1 for the Fever. Turnover, points conceded off turnovers, 15 Aces, 16 Fever. Fast break points, 2 Aces, 7 Fever. Points in the paint, 38 Aces, 32 Fever. Okay. And there were 2 technical fouls called on the Fever. The largest lead was 8 for the Aces and 10 for the Fever. Now, as far as the conferences, right now, Las Vegas is at the 4th position for the Western Conference, and the Indiana Fever is in 3rd position for the Eastern Conference. So it was a good game. It definitely was worth watching. The Fever have to continue to be consistent. They got to continue to have some finesse with their basketball plays, which means they don't go up in there and play straight up. They got to put a little street ball in there too. They got to put some moves in there as well. Okay, but have them be practice moves, not some moves where they're just gonna fling the ball up and hope it goes in. No, intentional, practiced moves. Okay, that will outplay the opponents. If they're playing small ball, it's important that they not only be quick, but they be accurate in getting the buckets. They must distract and disrupt their opponents always and have that be their focus the third and the fourth quarters. Because now, a lot of teams that play the Indiana Fever, they think, well, maybe they'll, chances are it's like 50-50, they'll be maybe tired and from the fourth, they won't finish through, they won't follow through with it, or they'll win in the fourth. So we want the standard to be that they expect the Indiana Fever to win definitely in the fourth quarter. Okay? And have that second half be the Fever all the way. All right? That's important. Very important. With Bibby added on now as an addition to the team, she is going to help them with points because she's a point maker as well. She's also disruptive in the paint, and she can hang out there with some of the biggest bigs. So that's not a bad. It wasn't a bad choice. I would have hoped they would have got someone taller and with a longer wingspan and maybe a little bit more weight on them to help in the paint. But hey, we'll see how she works out. Welcome. And so, that being said, we have Kelsey that was outstanding. Everybody, Cunningham was outstanding. Lexi was outstanding. Uh, you know, Ari and Howard and Boston, they all did their job. They all did their job. And one of the things that I noticed too is they put Timpson in. I think that Timpson needs to play more often, but strategically. Strategically, okay, because she's good at rebounding. She's good at creating some disruptiveness and some just being disruptive and distraction there. She's good at going up in the paint. So I think that they could use her more there. And the more they use her in that particular area on a defensive, and more that they use her in terms of her taking the shots for the buckets, she's going to have some practice put in. It's important for her to have some practice and some live practice, not just on a practice court, but in real games. For her to have real game practice, taking shots as well as getting rebounds and defending in the paint. So, and I think that the movement and putting her in the game with the Aces was spot on. It was at the right time. Okay. And so I'm still not sure why Turner's not really playing. Because again, it's almost like when you're not playing and you're only on the bench, that not only are you collecting just a paycheck, but it's also that you get out of the habit of being in the fray of the live game on the court. So it's important to have that live experience. I think being alive, on the court and in the fray of the other players. So I hope that they're going to keep Turner, that she gets more involved, or she's going to be sitting on the bench the whole rest of the season. I don't know. But the Indiana Fever did it. They win, and the Aces folded. So I hope that gives them confidence because they need to have confidence in their shooting ability, in their defending ability. They need to win without fouling their opponents. Okay, specifically Boston. When she's up against, say, with Wilson in the game, she got fouls, put on herself because she wasn't careful. Whenever Wilson's in the paint and doing what she does, she wants to create that collision so she can go to the free throw line. So Boston's got to have a way of avoiding herself to be in foul trouble. She needs to avoid that and still be able to guard and do the job in the paint. So I don't know what kind of answer they have for that in terms of their strategy, but they need to work on that. Here's your opportunity to subscribe. Come on over to my channel and subscribe. Okay? If you enjoy the content, you might as well. And I also suggest that you give me a thumbs up because that will also help me and it will be greatly appreciated. And tap the bell so you can be notified of new content when it's available. My name is Barbara, around the WNBA. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, peace and blessings. Talk to you soon.